Here I did a video showing 4 tools used in the domestic appliance servicing business, and I asked people if they could decide or if they knew what they were for. So now I'm going to reveal what they're for. I'll start with this one. This is the non-hoover one. I'll move these out of the way for a second. This is the non-hoover one. It's got a little handle, and as I explained, it's got various fittings on the end. Well, actually what that was for was for fitting hoses on Electrolux vacuum cleaners. In the early days, well, the very early days, they used a chrome ball bearing type fitting Electrolux and it's actually held on by string, believe it or not. Then in the next phase they used a screw-in device, what it was a kind of a plastic unit collar which screwed into the end of the hose to hold the fitting in place, and they were rather fiddly and almost impossible to get in or out without breaking. And this tool was brought out by, I don't know whether Electrolux themselves use them, they probably did have one like it, but this was a pattern tool which we used to use in the old days to take out those and refit the Electrolux couplings to fit the hose end onto the actual hose, because they had this various plastic insert with indents in, and this tool you could select the right one and you could turn the fitting in and fit a new hose end on, and it was virtually impossible without that. You could just about manage it, but they were very tight, and this solved the problem. So this wasn't from Electrolux, this is what we used to buy from pattern spares suppliers. They must have copied it from Electrolux, I should think. So that's what that was for, so we'll put that one out of the way. Now we go to the other tools. These are all actual Hoover tools that Hoover supplied, and 2 of them are for Hoover washing machines and the other one's for the vacuum cleaner. So we do the vacuum cleaner first. This one here, I don't know what other use it has, but its main use is a riveting tool. It was used mainly on 612 and 638 bodies, where they fitted the handle socket onto the main casting, and this tool was designed to rivet the actual handle socket, or the bottom part of the handle socket that the socket fitted on, I should say. And these various fittings they screwed on the end. There's different sizes for different models, and then you could put that in and tighten this up, and it kind of peened the ends over and riveted it. So it's basically a riveting tool for Hoover bodies. It's got a number on there, J44418, whatever that means. But it's obviously just what they used in the factory in the service industry. It was never, they didn't sell them. This was given to us when Hoover closed their office, their local office, service office, and we took on a lot of the work and we had some of the tools from it. So that's what that one was. This one, it's a strange beast. It's got a thread in the end there. It's rather heftily built. You can put a Tommy bar through the top, and a thread here, which is a left-hand thread. So in other words, when I do it up, it undoes it. And in the end you'll see there's a sort of a knurled end on there, just a rod, and you think, what on earth is that for? Well, actually, I can't get it screwed again now because it's the wrong way around. What you do, this was designed to use with Hoover ringers. In the early days, the ringers, they had 2 rollers and sort of a yoke that held the rollers in, and there were 4 fairly hefty bolts, and they used to get corroded in the aluminium ringer body, and the heads would snap off. You try to undo them and they'd snap off, and all this simply was, when the head snapped off, you screwed this end onto what was left of the bolt, screwed it down, and then tighten this up really tight onto the end of the bolt, which locked it in this thing, and then using a hefty spanner you could undo it and yank the bolt out, if you were lucky. It didn't always work, so that's what that's for. It's really a bolt extractor. It hasn't got much use other than for Hoover ringers, and I don't think you get much call for it these days, but because being a scrimper I've kept it, so there's that. Now this is more interesting. Well, I thought it was interesting at the time. This is actually an indexing tool for use with Hoover Keymatics. And again, it's a similar principle to the last tool, only much smaller. It's got a little thread in that end and a threaded rod with a wing nut. What it is, on the sloping front Keymatics, really good quality machines, you had to sometimes move the program cam round. It had a mechanical program timer in it with various cam positions. Mostly the early ones were 36, the later ones were 42, and you had to have a means of turning it to each cam position so you could test the switching unit and various parts of it. And what you did, there was a flexible drive which come off the actual program timer, went to the front of the machine, which drove a little ribbon or a disc, depending on the model, to tell you at what stage the washing machine was in, whether it was on the rinse or the spin or in the middle of a wash. And what you did, if you wanted to do it manually, you take that little flexible drive off, and then you screw this in its place onto the threaded stub, and then using this piece you tighten this down on the end of that threaded stub, like almost like the ringer tool in a way, on the end of the bolt. And then with that means you could then turn this and then click the program timer around one click at a time to a particular, so you had a chart with a cam position, and each click of that was a different cam position, and then you could check the circuits to see which were working and which weren't, and whether there was a fault in it. But that's what it is. It's just a simple indexing tool. The strange thing is Hoover actually sold these, and they were ridiculously expensive towards the end. It was listed in the book, and there was something like £35 I think they were charging for it. We had them originally for nothing. There's no use at all now, but I haven't got the heart to throw it away. I'll explain about the indexing tool. Not that it's probably of any interest to anybody, but I'll do it while I've got the thing. This is the service manual for the old Hoover Keymatic. It's dated 1964, so it's getting on a bit now. And I was just showing you what I meant by the cam positions. This was a chart, and you've got cam position here, 1 to 42, and then if you follow it across for each cam position, it would tell you which switches were or were not made, where a line was in it, that switch was made. So by putting this into the program timer and turning it slowly, you could turn it to any particular cam position, and then when you got it on the cam position, say for example if the heater wasn't working, you could work out which contacts should be made and which shouldn't be made at that particular time, and work out whether there's a fault or not. To be honest with you, I carried one of these with me when I was doing servicing on these machines, but I can't honestly hardly remember ever using it, because you got to the point where you knew what the fault was without even doing any testing. I mean, the heater contact was normally the one that went in a program timer because of the heavy current involved, so it was hardly necessary to use this. But that's about it. There below is just, I'll just show the bit below, that's the wiring diagram for the Keymatic, and all these are the various switch positions here. This is the key plate switch, and these are the program switches. It's very ingenious. It was a superb model. But anyway, that's what the index tool was used for. Bye.